Captain Elias Monroe had learned long ago that space rarely cared about human plans. Charts, equations, and confident predictions all meant little once a ship slipped beyond familiar routes. Still, he had not expected this. The Pilgrim's ledger drifted slowly toward a station that should not exist. Monroe stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the wide forward display. The station hung against the dark like a massive ring of metal and light, its surface covered in glowing patterns that shifted like living symbols. No registry mark matched it. No human map showed it. "Confirm again," Monroe said calmly, though his pulse was faster than he liked. Navigator Chen swallowed. "Position confirmed, Captain. We are 300 light-years off approved corridor. No known trade hubs, no distress signals, no warning beacons." That alone made Monroe uneasy. Unknown space usually announced itself with threats, not silence. The mistake had started 12 hours earlier when a routine jump calculation flickered red for less than half a second. Engineering cleared it. Navigation confirmed the math. The jump went through, and now they were here. "Any weapons charging?" Monroe asked. "No active targeting," Tactical Officer Ramirez replied. "Station defenses are strange. They're there but not powered like military systems." Before Monroe could answer, a soft chime echoed through the bridge. The comms officer turned sharply. "Incoming transmission," she said. "It's open channel, universal frequency." On screen, Monroe ordered. The display shifted. A figure appeared, tall and narrow, its body wrapped in layered fabric that shimmered faintly. Its face was not human, but it was calm, symmetrical, and unmistakably intelligent. A translator bar blinked at the bottom of the screen. "Human vessel Pilgrim's ledger," the figure said, its voice smooth and measured. "You are expected. Docking clearance is granted." Monroe frowned. "Expected by who?" "By the Accord Station of Calaris," the figure replied. "Your arrival has been logged and verified." "That's not possible," Chen muttered under her breath. Monroe ignored her. "We didn't schedule a stop. This jump was unplanned." The alien tilted its head slightly. "All arrivals are unplanned from the perspective of those unaware of the contract." The bridge went silent. Monroe kept his expression neutral. "What contract?" "There will be time for explanation once you are inside," the figure said. "Your presence is overdue." The transmission ended. No threats, no demands, just certainty. Ramirez broke the silence. "Captain, this feels wrong." Monroe nodded slowly. "It does, but they didn't pull us in, didn't power weapons, and didn't block our jump. If they wanted us gone or dead, we wouldn't be talking." He took a breath. "Prepare to dock, keep shields at half, no aggressive posture." As the Pilgrim's ledger moved closer, Monroe felt the weight of command settle deeper. First contact situations were never clean, never simple. And this one carried the unsettling feeling that someone else had already written the rules. The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold ships 10 times the ledger's size. Lights brightened as they approached, forming paths that guided the ship in with quiet precision. The landing clamps locked in place with a deep, steady hum. Monroe assembled a small team. Chen, Ramirez, the ship's linguistics specialist doctor. Havorson and a security detail of 2. No heavy weapons, no armor, just sidearms and formal uniforms. The airlock opened. The air inside the station was breathable, cool, and faintly scented with something metallic and sharp. The corridor beyond was wide and smooth, the walls etched with glowing symbols that pulsed softly as the humans walked past. They were not alone. Figures stood along the corridor edges, watching in silence. Some were tall, some short, some shaped in ways Monroe had never seen before. None looked hostile. Many wore garments similar to the figure from the screen, ceremonial, layered, carefully arranged. "They were really expecting us," Chen whispered. "Yes," Havorson replied quietly. "And they prepared." The corridor opened into a vast chamber. Monroe stopped. The room was filled with beings, dozens of them, standing in orderly lines. Their clothing was elaborate, clearly ceremonial, and varied by species. Colors, textures, and shapes blended into a display that was beautiful and overwhelming at the same time. At the far end of the hall stood a raised platform. Symbols glowed above it, brighter than the rest, casting soft light across the gathered crowd. "This is not a trade hall," Ramirez said under her breath. "This is a ceremony." A familiar figure stepped forward, the same alien from the screen. Up close, Monroe could see fine details in its features, lines that suggested age and authority. "Captain Elias Monroe," the alien said. "Welcome, I am Archivist Selun of Kelaris." Monroe inclined his head slightly. "You said we were expected. I need you to explain why." Selun gestured toward the hall. "You have arrived to complete a delivery." Monroe blinked. "We're a courier ship, but I can assure you we are not carrying anything like this." Selun's eyes, dark and reflective, studied him. "The delivery is not contained within your cargo holds." A pause. Havorson's voice was tight. "Archivist, what exactly do you believe we are delivering?" Selun turned, extending one long arm toward the assembled figures. "The brides!" The word echoed in Monroe's mind. He felt his stomach drop. "That's not possible," Monroe said immediately. "Humans do not transport people like cargo. We didn't agree to anything like that." A ripple of quiet confusion moved through the hall. Several figures shifted. Selun raised a hand, calming them. "There is no misunderstanding," Selun said. "Your species was entered into the Accords after verification." "By who?" Monroe demanded. "By history," Selun replied simply. Selun gestured, and symbols flared into the air between them, forming images. Wars, ruined cities, fleets burning in space, planets scarred but still alive. "Your species has survived internal conflict beyond acceptable probability," Selun continued. "You endured extinction threats without external guardianship. You rebuilt repeatedly. You adapted." The images shifted again. Human colonies, supply chains, rescue missions, ships rushing into danger rather than away. "In galactic terms," Selun said, "this qualifies humanity as a warrior anchor species." Monroe stared. "We didn't ask for that label." "No species ever does," Selun replied. Havorson swallowed. "What does that have to do with brides?" Selun's voice remained calm, almost reverent. "Under the Accords, civilizations seek stability through binding alliances. For warrior anchor species, such alliances take the form of consort bonds. The representatives you see here were chosen to join your people, to bind their futures to yours." Monroe felt heat rise in his chest. "That's not how humans operate. No one joins anything without consent." Selun tilted its head. "Consent is assumed within the Accords." "Well, it shouldn't be," Monroe snapped. Silence followed, not anger, confusion. Selun studied Monroe closely. "You reject the delivery." "I reject the premise," Monroe said firmly. "No human government signed this. No human agreed to this." A murmur spread through the hall, sharper now. Selun's expression shifted, something like concern passing over its features. "This has never occurred before." "That doesn't make it right," Monroe replied. One of the assembled figures stepped forward then. She was tall, her form slender but strong, her eyes bright and focused. Her clothing bore markings unlike the others, less ceremonial, more practical. She spoke, her voice steady. "Archivist, may I speak?" Selun inclined its head. "You may, Envoy Terine." She turned her gaze to Monroe. "Human captain, we are not prisoners, we volunteered." Monroe met her eyes. "Volunteered for what exactly?" "For alliance," Terine said. "For protection, for partnership. Our world's border powers that consume, not negotiate, your species resists." "That matters." Monroe felt the weight of her words, but shook his head. "Even so, this cannot happen without discussion, without choice on both sides." Terine hesitated. "Choice was not expected to be refused." "That's the problem," Monroe said quietly. Selun raised both hands, symbols dimming around the hall. "Captain Monroe, refusal places your species in a precarious position." Monroe crossed his arms. "Explain." "The Accords grant protected status to those who accept," Selun said. "Those who refuse are unaligned." Ramirez stiffened. "Meaning vulnerable." "Yes," Selun replied. Monroe exhaled slowly. He could feel the situation tightening like a trap that had closed without malice, only assumption. "Then you made a dangerous mistake," Monroe said. Selun looked at him. "How so?" "You assumed humans would quietly accept a role assigned by strangers," Monroe said. "We don't do that." He turned slightly, activating his wrist comm. "Bridge, transmit priority message to Earth, full encryption, first contact protocol Alpha 7. "Acknowledged," came the reply. Selun watched, unreadable. "What will you tell them?" "The truth," Monroe said, "that the galaxy thinks it owns our future." The hall remained silent as the message was sent, light years away. Somewhere deep inside the station, alarms did not sound. Weapons did not charge, but something had shifted, and everyone in that room knew it. The mistake was never the jump. It was assuming humanity would not push back. The silence in the Great Hall lasted longer than Captain Monroe expected. No one moved to stop him after the message to Earth was sent. No guards stepped forward. No alarms sounded. Instead, the gathered beings watched him with a mix of confusion, curiosity, and something close to concern. It was clear that rejection was not part of their long history. Archivist Selûne finally broke the stillness. "Your message will take time to reach your world," Selûne said. "Faster than many species possess, slower than some. Until then, protocol requires that you and your crew remain guests of Kelaris." Monroe narrowed his eyes slightly. "Guests, not detainees." "Yes," Selûne replied. "You are free to move within assigned areas. No harm will come to you." "That's reassuring," Ramirez muttered. Selûne gestured toward a side passage branching from the hall. "Accommodations have been prepared. Separate from the consort delegation, as you have expressed discomfort." Monroe gave a short nod. "That's appreciated." As they followed Selûne through the corridor, Monroe felt the weight of unseen eyes on his back. The so-called brides remained behind, whispering softly among themselves. He could not shake the feeling that many of them were studying him not as a mistake, but as a possibility. The assigned quarters were unlike any space station rooms Monroe had seen before. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing softly with adjustable light. Gravity was Earth normal, air fresh and clean. It was clear that Kelaris had studied humanity carefully, too carefully. Once Selûne departed, Monroe gathered his team in the central room. "No one goes anywhere alone," Monroe said. "We observe, we ask questions, and we don't promise anything." Chen nodded. "Captain, they really believe this system works. For them, refusing might be dangerous." Monroe leaned against a table. "It already is." Havorson tapped at her tablet, reviewing translated data pulled from the station's open network. "The Accords are ancient, thousands of years old. They were designed to prevent endless war by binding strong species to weaker ones through personal alliances." Ramirez frowned. "Marriage as a military treaty, more like a social lock," Havorson replied. "Once bonded, betrayal becomes culturally unthinkable," Monroe exhaled. "And humanity just kicked the door in." "Yes," Havorson said softly, "but also changed the conversation." Before Monroe could respond, a soft tone chimed at the door. The panel shifted, revealing Envoy Tarine standing calmly in the corridor. She was alone. "I requested permission to speak," she said. "It was granted." Monroe studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Come in." She entered slowly, her posture open, hands visible. She looked around the room with interest, then met Monroe's gaze. "You are different from what we expected," Tarine said. Monroe crossed his arms. "We've been hearing that a lot." She inclined her head slightly. "The Accords describe warrior anchor species as dominant, decisive, and unquestioning once selected." Monroe gave a short laugh. "Whoever wrote that never met humans." Tarine's eyes softened. "That may be why many of us volunteered." Ramirez stiffened. Monroe raised a hand slightly, signaling her to wait. "Explain," Monroe said. Tarine took a breath. "My people have been bound before. We have accepted protection in exchange for loyalty. It saved us, but it also trapped us. Decisions made centuries ago still govern our lives." "And you think humans are different," Monroe said. "I think humans argue," Tarine replied. "You question rules, you break systems that no longer serve those within them." Monroe studied her carefully. "That doesn't always end well." "No," she agreed, "but it ends honestly." Silence settled between them. "I did not come to pressure you," Tarine continued. "I came to ask something." Monroe waited. "When your world responds," she said, "will you speak for all humans or only your governments?" Monroe felt a chill run through him. "That's a dangerous question." "Yes," Tarine said, "but an important one." Before Monroe could answer, an alarm sounded, not loud but sharp. The lights dimmed slightly, shifting to a cooler tone. Ramirez was already moving. "Captain, station power fluctuation. External energy spike." Monroe activated his comm. "Bridge status?" Chen's voice came back tight. "We're detecting multiple warp signatures at the edge of the system, not friendly patterns." Monroe turned to Selûne's channel. "Archivist, we have incoming ships." Selûne's image appeared almost instantly. "We are aware." "How many?" Monroe demanded. "Enough," Selûne replied. The truth of that single word settled heavily in Monroe's chest. Tarine looked toward the ceiling, her jaw tightening. They sensed hesitation. "Who?" Monroe asked. "The Varkesh Combine," Selûne answered. "They watch for weakness. A refusal of the Accord signals vulnerability." Ramirez swore under her breath. Monroe's mind raced. Humanity's fleet was far away. Earth would need time to respond. And Kelaris, for all its ceremony, was not a fortress. What are your defenses? Monroe asked. Selûne hesitated. Under the Accords, protected species are defended collectively. And unprotected ones? Monroe pressed. Selûne did not answer immediately. That's what I thought, Monroe said grimly. Chen's voice cut in again. Captain, they're hailing the station. Selûne straightened. We will receive the transmission. The image shifted to a new figure, broad, angular, its armor-like body marked with sharp lines and glowing red patterns. Its eyes burned with focused intensity. This station is in violation, the Varkesh commander growled through the translator. The Accords are delayed. Protection is void, Selûne stood firm. Deliberation is ongoing. There is no deliberation, the commander snapped. There is acceptance or there is claim. Monroe stepped into view beside Selûne. The Varkesh commander paused, eyes narrowing. Identify. Captain Elias Monroe, Monroe said evenly. Human expeditionary vessel. A low rumble escaped the Varkesh's chest. The new anchor, you refuse what you were given. We refuse coercion, Monroe replied. There's a difference. The commander leaned closer to the screen. Your refusal marks you as unclaimed, and unclaimed systems are resources. Monroe met its gaze without flinching. We're not resources. The commander's eyes flicked briefly toward the hall behind Selûne, where dozens of allied envoys waited. You endanger them with your pride. Monroe's voice hardened. We endanger no one, you do. The transmission cut abruptly. Chen's voice returned, urgent. Captain, Varkesh ships are deploying attack formations. Ramirez looked at Monroe. Orders, Monroe didn't hesitate. Evacuate non-combatants to interior sectors. Prepare our ship for launch. Selûne turned sharply. You cannot fight them, you are one vessel. Monroe nodded. We know. Then why? Because, Monroe said, humans don't wait quietly for someone else to decide our fate. Tarine stepped forward. If you engage them, you make yourselves enemies of the Combine. Monroe looked at her. Sounds like that already happened. The station shuddered as the first distant impact struck its outer shield. Lights flickered. A deep vibration rolled through the floor. Selûne's comm cracked for the first time. This station was never meant for war. Monroe activated his comm again. Bridge launch sequence. Power weapons but hold fire until my mark. Aye, Captain. As the room trembled again, Tarine met Monroe's eyes. You could still accept the Accords. They would retreat. Monroe shook his head slowly. They'd just wait for the next moment we hesitate. Another impact shook the station harder this time. Monroe straightened, shoulders squared. If humanity is going to be judged, it won't be for surrendering. He turned toward the exit. Archivist, you wanted time for explanation. Now you'll get a demonstration. Outside, the Pilgrim's ledger disengaged from its clamps, engines flaring to life as alien ships closed in. And far away, racing through the dark, humanity's answer was on its way, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. The bridge of the Pilgrim's ledger hummed with controlled chaos. Captain Elias Monroe stood at the center, eyes scanning the viewports as Varkesh attack ships moved in precise formations, like predators circling prey. Every sensor beeped warnings, but Monroe's mind focused on one thing: strategy. Humans did not cower when cornered, they adapted, they survived. Captain, Chen said, pointing to the approaching fleet. They're faster than expected. Even if we outmaneuver, their numbers overwhelm us. Monroe nodded. Numbers don't win wars, decisions do. Ramirez, prepare weapon arrays. Fire only on my command. Havorson, keep communication with the station secure. We may need backup from Tarine's envoys. Ramirez glanced at him. You're seriously thinking about a fight against all of them with just this one ship? Monroe's expression did not waver. We're not alone. Human ingenuity doesn't come from firepower alone. Keep calm, we make them hesitate. Chen's fingers flew over the console. Varkesh ships are closing to attack range in 10 seconds. Monroe's mind worked rapidly. He remembered every simulation, every lesson from decades of human space operations. Humans had faced impossible odds on countless worlds, on countless fronts. They had survived plagues, famine, wars, political collapses, and technological disasters. Nothing in the galaxy had ever prepared them to back down from a threat when innocent lives were at stake. Steady, Monroe whispered. We do this step by step. The Ledger's engines flared, twisting the ship with precision. The first wave of Varkesh vessels fired, sending a pulse of energy toward the station. Shields flared as the outer hull absorbed the impact. Monroe gritted his teeth, but he remained composed. The station's shields, coupled with their own, were strong enough to hold for now, but only if he made the right moves. Fire countermeasures, Monroe ordered. Not weapons, defensive drones. Make them think the station is stronger than it appears. Ramirez's hands moved quickly. Drones launched silently, weaving in unpredictable patterns. Varkesh sensors detected them and fired again, wasting energy on phantom targets. Monroe watched as the attackers' formation wavered slightly. Humans had already gained the first advantage: hesitation. Captain, Havorson said, eyes wide, I'm receiving encrypted messages from Earth's military fleet. They've mobilized faster than expected. They're on course for the system. Monroe allowed himself a brief smile. That's more like it. Humanity responds quickly when our people are threatened. A sudden tremor shook the ledger. Monroe braced himself. Damage report. Chen's voice came through clearly. Minor hull breaches on outer panels, no critical systems compromised. Good, keep it that way, Monroe said. Now, Ramirez, prepare tactical diversion. I want them distracted, not destroyed. The bridge team worked with calm efficiency, the kind born of countless crises and narrow escapes. Monroe's mind raced with possibilities, each decision carefully weighed. Humanity had never been the strongest species, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But no species had matched their resourcefulness, their ability to turn a disadvantage into an advantage, or their relentless refusal to surrender. Down in the station, Envoy Taryn coordinated with her peers. Dozens of the so-called brides moved swiftly, managing shield systems, relays, and defensive energy flows. Their hands, trained for diplomacy and negotiation, now executed commands like elite military officers. Monroe felt a surge of respect. These were not passive hostages. They were equals, allies willing to act to protect not only themselves but the humans they had come to trust. From the main viewport, Monroe watched the Varkesh fleet grow impatient. One of their ships broke formation and moved closer, probing the station's defenses. Monroe saw his chance. Ramirez, he said, target that lead ship with our interference array. Nothing lethal, just enough to make it think twice. The interference pulse shot forward, not damaging but scrambling the enemy sensors. The lead ship wavered, its formation faltering. Monroe pressed further. Chen, mirror that signal to their other vessels. Make them think all of our defenses are active and mobile. A ripple of confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Monroe leaned forward. Humanity's strength was not in power, it was in unpredictability. Then a voice came through the ledger's calm. Selun's image appeared, tense and serious. Captain Monroe, the Varkesh are reacting. But they will regroup quickly. Your tactics must escalate. Monroe nodded. Understood. Humanity doesn't wait for permission, we act. The station's shields flared in unison with the ledger's interference pulses. Varkesh ships struggled to maintain formation. Envoy Taryn's team moved with quiet authority, rerouting energy to strengthen vulnerable areas. The coordinated effort of humans and alien envoys created something unexpected, an appearance of overwhelming power, enough to give even the Varkesh pause. Monroe knew the moment of truth was approaching. Chen, full thrusters, evasive maneuvers, we lead them into the station's perimeter traps. Copy that, Captain, Chen said, a hint of excitement in her voice. The ledger twisted sharply, drawing a cluster of enemy vessels into the station's defensive corridors. Automated energy grids activated, creating barriers and interference zones. The Varkesh ships scrambled to respond, their movements becoming chaotic. Monroe could feel the tension in every bone. Humanity was not invincible. One mistake, one miscalculation, and they could all be lost. But for every crisis, humans found a solution. They adapted. They survived. They outsmarted impossible odds. That was their legacy. Ramirez, Monroe said, voice calm and deliberate, prepare to disengage once the enemy is sufficiently delayed. Yes, Captain. The Varkesh commander's voice came over the comm, furious. You will not escape. You will pay for your defiance. Monroe ignored the threats. Humans don't wait to be threatened, he whispered. We respond. The diversion worked. Several Varkesh ships were trapped in the station's corridors, energy pulses disabling their engines temporarily. Monroe turned the ledger, leading the remaining enemy vessels on a controlled chase, giving the station time to reinforce shields and prepare countermeasures. Selun's image appeared again, less composed than before. Captain, the station would have fallen without your decisive action. Humanity has proven itself. Monroe allowed himself a brief nod. We only protect those we're responsible for, nothing more, nothing less. From the corner of his eye, Monroe saw Taryn directing energy flows to stabilize vulnerable corridors. She caught his gaze and gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of partnership and trust. Humans had not asked for these allies, but now, together, they could hold the line. Minutes passed, though to Monroe it felt like hours. Every moment counted, every choice was critical, and humans, he reminded himself, never left critical moments to chance. Finally, the Varkesh commander's voice came again, more measured, cautious. "This is temporary. You have delayed us, but delay is not victory. You cannot hold indefinitely." Monroe straightened. Victory is not just about holding. It's about showing the galaxy that humans do not yield to threats or assumptions. That's something no one else expected. And we always exceed expectations. The commander's silence spoke volumes. The Varkesh had faced many species, but none like humanity. None had shown the combination of resilience, intelligence, and sheer unpredictability that Monroe and his team embodied. As the enemy fleet slowly withdrew, regrouping at a distance, Monroe felt the first real relief in hours. The immediate danger had passed, not because of superior firepower, but because of human ingenuity and resolve. He turned to his team. "Status." "Shields stabilized," Chen said. "Hull integrity intact, no casualties." "Station secure for now," Selun added. "Your actions have bought us time, but more will come." Monroe gave a small nod. "Time is what humans make of it. We'll use it wisely." Envoy Taryn stepped forward, her expression serious. "Captain, your species has shown strength and decisiveness. You have earned not just respect, but an understanding of our worlds. That matters more than any treaty." Monroe studied her, a quiet smile forming. "We never wanted to be expected heroes, but if being human means standing firm when the galaxy assumes we won't, then that's what we'll do." A soft hum ran through the station as systems recalibrated. The so-called brides, now allies, moved among consoles, monitoring and maintaining defenses. Monroe felt a surge of pride, not just for the crew, but for humanity as a whole. Humans were never the strongest, but they were clever, relentless, and united when it mattered. Selun looked at him, expression now one of cautious admiration. "Captain Monroe, it seems the galaxy must reconsider what humanity represents." Monroe leaned on the railing of the bridge. "Let them reconsider. We never asked for permission to survive, and we never will." As the Pilgrim's ledger and the station settled into a tense calm, Monroe allowed himself one thought. The battle was not over, and the galaxy would continue to test humanity. But humans were ready, not because they had no fear, but because they had a choice, and they always chose to fight, to adapt, and to survive. Somewhere far beyond the stars, Earth's fleet was racing to join them. But for now, Monroe and his team had shown a simple truth. Humans did not wait for fate. They shaped it themselves. And the galaxy had just learned that lesson the hard way. The calm after the skirmish felt fragile, like thin ice over dark water. Captain Elias Monroe stood on the bridge of the Pilgrim's ledger, watching the Varkesh fleet retreat toward distant sectors. Their movements were deliberate, cautious, but the threat was far from over. He knew the Combine would return, stronger, smarter, and angrier. The galaxy rarely forgave a species that defied expectation. Yet Monroe felt no fear, not for himself, not for his crew, not for humanity. Fear had a purpose, yes, but courage was action, and humans had always acted when the odds were impossible. "Captain," Chen said, "sensors indicate incoming transmissions from multiple Kalaris systems. They're contacting allies, confirming your actions. Looks like word of our defense is spreading fast." Monroe allowed himself a small nod. "Good. Let them see that humans don't just survive, they respond. Havorson, open channels for coordination with Taryn and the envoys." Havorson's fingers danced across the console, transmitting secure signals to envoys stationed throughout the massive network of Kalaris stations. Responses came back quickly, messages of respect, concern, and agreement. The envoys wanted guidance, and Monroe realized the weight of human leadership extended far beyond his own vessel. Taryn's voice echoed through the comm system. "Captain Monroe, your actions have inspired confidence. Many of us had assumed the Accords required submission. We now see an alternative, collaboration through choice, not obligation." Monroe let the words sink in. The so-called brides, these elite envoys, were no longer simply representatives of their people. They were partners, allies, individuals with agency, choosing to work with humanity because they trusted them, not because tradition demanded it. Selûne appeared on a separate screen, his usual calm composure tempered with something more human, a glimmer of admiration. "Captain, the Council has convened to consider your position. Never before has a warrior anchor species rejected the Accords. Never before have they demonstrated such strategy under direct threat." Monroe crossed his arms. "We did what humans have always done. We survived, and we refused to let others define our survival for us." Outside, the stars streaked as human fleet vessels arriving faster than even Monroe had expected. The fleet did not descend in force but spread across the sector, a show of unity and strength. Every ship transmitted signals of peaceful intent to Kalaris and nearby stations, while sensors kept watch for Varkesh movements. "Captain," Ramirez said, pointing to the viewport, "reinforcements are here. Earth didn't waste any time." Monroe nodded. "That's good. But reinforcements alone won't win this. We need coordination." Taryn's voice returned, calm and precise. "We can assist. My people are willing to operate under your direction for mutual defense, not because you command, but because we choose to act with you." Monroe allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "That's the difference. Humans lead by example, not by assumption, and the galaxy will see the results." The Varkesh fleet had regrouped at a distance, watching cautiously. The commander's previous arrogance had shifted into calculation. Monroe knew they were analyzing, predicting, and anticipating human strategy. And Monroe knew something else. No species could predict a human mind. The fleet moved again, slowly this time, testing the station's outer defenses. Monroe saw an opportunity. "Chen, plot a course that draws their main formation into the channel near the station's auxiliary defense grids. Havorson, coordinate with Taryn, activate those grids in sequence." As the ledger twisted into position, energy barriers flared along the station's outer ring. Automated pulse emitters lit the path, invisible to the naked eye but deadly to anyone caught unaware. Varkesh vessels entered the channel, expecting resistance, expecting to overwhelm, expecting submission. Instead, they found precise interference, a carefully orchestrated maze of obstacles and defensive energy. Monroe felt the familiar thrill of human ingenuity at work. Every step, every maneuver was deliberate. Humans did not rely on luck. They relied on thought, adaptation, and the refusal to surrender. The Varkesh ships faltered, systems overloaded, communications scrambled. One vessel collided with the energy barrier, triggering a chain reaction that forced the rest to retreat. Selûne's image appeared again, his expression unreadable but his voice filled with a rare warmth. "Captain Monroe, it seems humanity has redefined the outcome." Monroe let out a quiet laugh. "We didn't redefine anything. We just acted like humans." He turned to Taryn. "Your envoys handled the grids perfectly. You've proven that choice and cooperation can achieve what blind tradition cannot." Taryn inclined her head. "It was remarkable to work alongside a species that refuses to be bound by assumptions. We've learned from you as much as you have learned from us." Monroe allowed himself a moment to observe the station. The envoys were returning to their positions, tending to systems, repairing minor damage, and coordinating defenses. They were active, competent, and autonomous. He felt a surge of pride, not in himself, not even in the crew, but in the fact that humans and these alien envoys could act as equals, combining skill, strategy, and willpower. The Council of Kalaris convened via holographic assembly. Selûne addressed the room. "The humans have demonstrated unprecedented autonomy, strategic skill, and resilience. Their actions have preserved the station and prevented loss of life. I recommend the Council reconsider the Accords in light of their demonstration." A ripple of approval passed through the chamber. Monroe could see the subtle nods of the envoys, their eyes shining with a mix of respect and relief. Humanity had survived a test they never asked to take, but more than survival, they had changed perception. The galaxy had expected obedience and found defiance paired with brilliance. Monroe looked at his crew. Ramirez, Chen, and Havorson, all of them had held their positions, executed orders, and demonstrated the same human tenacity he had known since the day they joined the fleet. They were not heroes in the traditional sense. They were humans, resourceful, persistent, clever. That was enough. Selûne spoke again, addressing Monroe personally. "Captain, the Council is prepared to offer a new resolution. The Accords will be rewritten. No longer will they assume compliance or submission. Instead, they will recognize free will, mutual choice, and cooperation as the guiding principles for interstellar alliances. Monroe's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That's what humans expected all along. No coercion. No assumptions, only respect and shared purpose. The council agreed unanimously, and messages rippled through the galaxy. Word spread quickly. Humanity had stood firm, refused arbitrary expectations, and demonstrated not just survival but leadership. The Varkesh Combine, previously confident in their dominance, had been outmaneuvered not through brute force, but through strategy, adaptability, and resolve. Outside, the Varkesh ships retreated further, their formations broken, their confidence shaken. The galaxy had learned a simple, undeniable truth. Humans could not be underestimated. They did not yield, they did not surrender, and they did not follow paths assigned by others. Selûne turned to Monroe privately. You have done more than defend a station. You have rewritten the rules of engagement. You have shown the galaxy that humans are a species that cannot be assumed, controlled, or predicted. Monroe nodded. We don't do it for glory. We do it because it's right, because the alternative is surrender. And humans don't surrender. Havorson tapped her tablet, reading incoming reports. Captain, the envoys who volunteered, the ones you met first, they have asked to remain here as partners. Not because they are bound by the Accords, but because they choose to stay and work with humanity. Monroe smiled faintly. Then let them. Let everyone choose. That's the way humans operate, and maybe the galaxy should learn the same lesson. Tarine stepped forward, her eyes meeting Monroe's. Your people have shown more than strength. You've shown the value of choice, courage, and collaboration. That matters more than any treaty or tradition. Monroe straightened, looking out at the stars stretching infinitely beyond the station. We didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for the Accords, but we won't be defined by them either. Humans survive, humans adapt, humans lead when they must, and now the galaxy knows it. A final message from Earth arrived, encrypted and fast-tracked by military channels. The fleet had joined the sector, sensors aligned, ready to back humanity if needed. But Monroe knew they had not needed the reinforcements to succeed. Humans had already proven themselves. The fleet's arrival was a show of solidarity, a confirmation that the species was united, not dependent, not weak, but ready. The Varkesh fleet, far away, hesitated. They had underestimated a single ship, underestimated the combination of human crew and alien allies, underestimated the resolve of a species that refused to follow pre-written rules. They would think twice before testing humanity again. Selûne spoke softly, almost reverently. Captain Monroe, the galaxy will remember this day. Humanity has not only survived, it has reshaped perception itself. Monroe allowed himself a quiet smile. We did what humans have always done. We acted when it mattered. We refused to accept limits placed by others, that's all. The station hummed with renewed energy. The envoys moved confidently, humans and aliens working side by side. The stars beyond seemed brighter, endless in possibility, as if the galaxy itself had acknowledged a new truth. Humans were not to be assumed, underestimated, or controlled. Monroe stood at the railing, hands resting lightly, watching the stars stretch endlessly into the void. Somewhere in the distance, the Varkesh fleet disappeared into the darkness, plotting surely, but for now defeated. The galaxy had learned something fundamental. Humans did not follow, they created. Humans did not yield, they led. Humans did not accept fate, they defined it. And Captain Monroe, standing quietly, knew that was just the beginning. The Pilgrim's Ledger and its crew had not only survived, they had ensured that humanity's voice, its choice, and its spirit would echo across the stars. The galaxy had been challenged. And humanity had answered.